Good evening, everyone. Welcome to tonight's Planning Committee meeting. I see it's 6 o'clock, and I am starting tonight's meeting based on the fact that both Councillor Kiley and Councillor Hill have provided their regrets for this evening. So I'm just going to ask if Councillor Chappelle is there, if he doesn't mind turning on his camera so that we can confirm that we do have quorum at this time. Excellent. Thank you so much. Before we get started with choosing a chair, I just wanted to confirm that we do have quorum. We do have members from staff present tonight. We've got Tim Park, Director of Planning Services, James Barr, Manager of Development Approvals, Janice Grant, Senior Planner, Mike Zlaggy, Planner, Ian Sullivan is our meeting host for this evening. And I'm Elizabeth Fawcett. I'm the Committee Clerk for Planning Committee. We currently have 3 agents available this evening to assist with the files, and we have 2 members of the public currently in the gallery. With that, I'm going to turn to committee members and see if there's anyone willing to volunteer as chair to run tonight's meeting. Councillor Hutchison.
I nominate Jim Neal.
Oh, and we've got a second. Councillor Neal, do you have any concerns with running tonight's meeting?
I arrived very late last night from 10 days in St. John's. So I'm going to apologize in advance if I kind of don't keep a handle on everything. But unless somebody else would like to step forward.
Do it, Jim. Just like old times.
I'm trying to make eye contact with Lisa.
No.
Thank you.
Okay, since we have the first and the seconder, we'll just do a quick vote. All those in favor for Councillor Neal? Excellent. I see we have a majority on that. So Councillor Neal, I will turn the floor over to you.
Thank you. I will call the meeting to order. Our first meeting is a public meeting. I will try to read the really small print on my phone. This is a notice of collection. It's held tonight, our public meetings held under the Planning Act. Personal information collected as a result of public meetings are collected under the authority of the Planning Act and will be used to assist in making a decision on the matter. Persons speaking at the meeting are requested to give their name and address for recording in the minutes. All names, addresses, opinions, and comments may be collected and may form part of the minutes, which will be available to the public. Additionally, interested members of the public can mail the committee clerk, who is indeed Elizabeth Fawcett, or the assigned planner if they wish to be notified regarding a particular application. Questions regarding the collection should be forwarded to the Director of Planning Services. Public meeting reports. The first portion of tonight's meeting is to present planning applications in a public forum as detailed in the public meeting reports. These reports do not contain a staff recommendation, and therefore no decisions will be made this evening. Following the presentations by the applicant, the meeting will be open to the public for comments and questions. Comprehensive reports. The second portion of tonight's meeting is to consider comprehensive reports. These reports do contain a staff recommendation, and the recommendation is typically to approve with conditions or to deny. After the planner's presentation, committee members will be able to ask questions of staff, followed by members of the public. Following the question and answer period, this committee then makes a recommendation on the application to City Council, who has the final say on the applications. Following council decision, notice will be circulated in accordance with the Planning Act. If a person or public body would otherwise have an ability to appeal the decision of the Council of the Corporation of the City of Kingston to the Ontario Land Tribunal, but that person or public body does not make oral submissions at a public meeting or make written submissions to the City of Kingston before the bylaw is passed, that person or public body is not entitled to appeal the decision. And a first public meeting has to do with Mulrooney Trucking Limited. I believe that's right, isn't it? Yeah. And so if the proponent would like to speak to this, first our planner, I'm sorry, I am making mistakes already. So if our planner can speak to this and introduce this, we'll then turn it over to the proponents.
Sure. Thank you. Good evening, Acting Chair and members of the committee. This is a public meeting for 1280 McAdoo's Lane, official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendment. I just will quickly confirm that notification was provided in accordance with the Planning Act as detailed in the public meeting report. To date, no public correspondence has been received regarding this application. As you mentioned previously, this meeting is the statutory public meeting held under the Planning Act, which provides an opportunity for the applicant to present the proposal to the public and planning committee, and for members of the public or committee to ask questions of the applicant regarding their proposal. In support of this meeting, staff prepared a public meeting report summarizing the proposal. It should be noted, as you mentioned, no recommendation is being presented this evening, nor is a decision being made tonight. Planning staff are in attendance in order to record any questions posed to the applicant and answer any technical questions regarding the planning process. Any questions posed this evening, as well as any correspondence received moving forward, will be addressed in a future report. Once the technical review and assessment of the proposal has been completed, planning staff will bring forward a comprehensive report with a recommendation back to committee at a future date. Thank you, and I'll pass it on to the proponent for their presentation.
Thank you very much. We'll now recognize the proponent or the proponent's agent, who will be given the floor.
Good evening, members of committee, staff, and members of the public. Can I just get an indication that I'm being heard well?
Yes, we hear you loud and clear. Thank you, Mr. Sandhu.
Thank you, Councillor Neil and Acting Chair. So good evening to everyone. My name is Amarjit Sandhu. I am an aggregate resources planner with MHBC Planning, and we are providing the planning and project management services to K. Mulrooney Trucking Limited, or KMT, in regards to their proposal to open the Mulrooney McAdoo's Quarry at 1280 McAdoo's Lane in the City of Kingston. Also attending with me tonight is Dan Mulrooney, President of KMT. And before I give my presentation, I would pass the floor on to Dan for him to make a few opening remarks. So Dan, if you're ready to go.
Hello, committee members, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, so I'm Dan Mulrooney, president of K. Mulrooney Trucking. We're proposing to license under the ARA 107 acres on McAdoo's Lane, property owned by KMT or affiliate companies. And we
I'm
have,
sorry to interrupt you. Do you have a
Yeah.
slideshow? If so, just mention when to switch the slides.
actually, yeah, Amarjet does. He can, just a little background on KMT. The company was founded in 1953 by my father, and he concentrated on trucking. We've expanded the business to multi-sector. We do several city jobs in the city of Kingston, heavy civil, road reconstruction, site development. We have a quarry now on Battersea Road in South Frontenac, and it's the source is getting depleted. So this is hence why we're trying to get a quarry on McAdoo's Lane to secure, future for another 50 years of aggregate source. And we use all this stone on our jobs in the city. And right now we have 6 jobs in the city of Kingston. Not all are for the city, but private developers as well. And with the McAdoo quarry, it'll be easier to get to the different sites in the city. And we'd be able to sell more aggregate to the public and other construction companies as well. That's about all I would like to say right now.
Thank you. Are there any other speakers?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I would then resume my presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. So if I could go to the slide number 2, please. So these 2 graphics show the location of the proposed quarry site. On the left hand, we've got a wide regional view. The proposed quarry location is indicated by the asterisk. And as you can see, it's well located in regards to the 401 and the urban area of the city of Kingston. On the right-hand side is an aerial image, more zoomed in. And again, you can see the site is on the north side of McAdoo's Lane. It's roughly centrally located along McAdoo's Lane with Perth Road, Division Street to the west, and Battersea Road and Montreal Street to the east. As I said, as it's evident on this map, that this is not only a close to market source for the urban area of the city of Kingston, but with the access to the 401 through the Division Street and Montreal Street interchanges, this source will also provide good access to locations along the 401 corridor and to the north into South Frontenac. McAdoo's Lane itself, as I'm sure everyone is aware, is a fairly heavily industrialized area, and it's predominantly related to auto salvage, construction related businesses, and is characterized by a lot of trucking activity. The closest residential uses to the proposed quarry site are 2 homes on Italia Lane, which are about 550 meters to the southeast of the proposed quarry. There are 3 homes at the east end of McAdoo's Lane, which are about 750 meters distant. And there are 2 homes at the west end of McAdoo's Lane, which are about 950 meters distant. If I can have slide 3, please. Thank you. A further zoomed in shot here in the mapping showing the boundaries of the proposed quarry license and adjacent land uses. So on the site itself, as you can see, it's in a very heavily disturbed condition, and fairly those uses are industrial in nature. We have a trucking yard, we have soil and concrete recycling, we have automobile and truck salvage, and we have a waste recycling operation. The waste recycling operation is on a portion of Mulrooney's property that is leased to Waste Connections Canada. The Lafarge and Cocoa quarries are labeled on the map, and they are to the west of the site. There are construction-related businesses to the east, Best Crete Concrete is labeled, but just immediately east is Hybrid Construction. There's vacant land and trucking and construction businesses to the south. The trucking business is, of course, the Manitoulin Transport Terminal, and the construction business is a Sousa ready-mix, concrete ready-mix plant. And there's vacant land to the north. Of the area outlined in red, which is the site under application for the quarry license and also for the official plan and zoning amendments, approximately the western 2/3 is owned by Mulrooney, either KMT or affiliate companies. And the eastern third roughly is in the ownership of Morgan's Truck Parts. Slide 4, please. So we're zooming now into how the site is configured in terms of its proposed operation. And these drawings, or this drawing specifically, is taken from the Aggregate Resources Act site plan that will govern the operation should it be licensed. So we have a site area of 43 hectares, but because of setbacks from roads and the hydro corridor, the maximum quarry area would be 35 hectares. And the quarry would operate at its maximum extent to a depth of between 33 and 40 meters. If approved, the quarry would provide an estimated 20 to 25 million tons of high quality bedrock reserves in a close to market location. The approval would also facilitate recycling of aggregate-based construction products and provide a location for the placement and beneficial reuse of excess soil. So this application, both under the Aggregate Resources Act, or ARA, and through the official plan and zoning amendments, in those applications, all these three uses are provided for and are considered and would form part of the decision. The quarry operation itself would occur in 3 separate excavations, and this is because there are features on the property and surrounding the property that don't allow extraction to occur on contiguous parcels. And those are essentially due to the hydro corridor, which is that angled feature in a northeast-southwest direction, and landfill lane, which is in between phase 2 and phase 3. So the 3 excavations would be, up to 3 excavations would be phase 1, phase 2 plus phase 4, and possibly phase 3. And phase 3, which is the rectangle to the west of landfill lane, is a possible phase because that is contingent on Mulrooney reaching agreement with Lafarge for common boundary extraction, because that piece is surrounded or is bordered to the north and to the west with an existing Lafarge quarry. And just to note that although we're describing these as phases, they don't represent a fixed extraction or time sequence, except in the case that phase 4 will follow phase 2. And the maximum annual tonnage that is being proposed for this site is 600,000 tons. That's corresponding with the other quarries that are operating in the area. And that is a requirement of the ARA process to identify what the maximum annual production would be should the site be licensed. As I mentioned before, and as Dan has referred to also, approval of the quarry at this location would meet key provincial and city planning policy objectives. It would make high quality reserves available at a close to market location. It would provide for recycling of products originally made from aggregates, which can then be reused and help conserve aggregate resources still in the ground, and avoid the aggregate, the recyclable products having to be landfilled. And it will also serve as a location where excess soil can be placed. That operation would occur in accordance with recently revised and updated provincial regulations. And by backfilling a portion of the site with excess soils, then that area of the site can be beneficially reused to allow for sustainable land uses to be continued by using the backfilled portion. Obviously, that would be land that would be returned to grade and it would not be essentially a hole in the ground, which has very limited uses. And all these activities, the production of aggregate, the conservation of aggregate, and the recycling of aggregate, and then the deposition of excess soil, all these three activities would occur in a location that is well suited and well equipped for those purposes, and has been technically studied and designed for those purposes. I find the close to market aspects of this proposal are noteworthy. If I may be so bold, there obviously has been a strong emphasis in recent years to grow the food that we consume locally. Well, in my submission, the same really applies for material that we need to economically and efficiently maintain and grow our society and infrastructure, especially when that infrastructure is under increasing pressure and in need of upgrading due to the effects of climate change. So having this quarry at this location serves or fulfills multiple planning policy objectives, and is well suited to the time we're in today, and will be in the near future. Slide 5, please. So as I mentioned, the south end of the site is proposed for the deposition of excess soil. And this graphic is from the rehabilitation plan of the ARA site plan. And what we're showing there is a rectangular area at the south end of the main portion of the quarry, which is phase 2 and phase 4. And that's shown as being backfilled to grade. And the remaining part of the excavation, which would be the what's excavated below the ground, would ultimately form a lake. Now the lake is shown in blue, and the contours around the lake feature are the slopes that would be created on a progressive basis around the lake or around the terminal faces of the quarry excavation. And that is a requirement of the Aggregate Resources Act. So that would be happening in those areas. And as I said, the backfill portion to the south, obviously having frontage on McAdoo's Lane, would be the area proposed for perhaps some other form of sustainable land use, such as commercial or industrial. And again, that fits well with the current and future, I would assume, uses along McAdoo's Lane. The lake itself will take time to develop because although the quarry will be technically operating below the water table, the bedrock itself in this area is very simple to say dry. It has a very low transmissivity for groundwater. So the lake that would form over time through groundwater accumulation and also surface water, mainly through precipitation. And of course, I think Council Committee may be aware through other Planning Act applications along McAdoo's Lane. This is an area that's kind of high and dry. Finding potable water is very difficult, and finding water of any kind at all is difficult. And many of the businesses along McAdoo's Lane rely on water that is brought in and held in cisterns or tanks for their use for industrial or business purposes. Slide 6, please. Thank you. So the applications that are required in order to establish this, the proposed Mulrooney McAdoo's quarry are twofold. First, we have applications made under the Planning Act. Those applications were submitted and deemed complete on April the 25th, and they constitute a City of Kingston official plan amendment where the existing designations would be amended to mineral resource area, and the approval authority, of course, is the City of Kingston. And then we also have an amendment to the zoning bylaw. In this case, it's the Township of Kingston zoning bylaw, whereby we are rezoning from the existing zones to special extractive industrial. And again, the approval authority is the City of Kingston. In that regard, of course, the city now has passed its citywide zoning bylaw. That was passed subsequent to the filing of the zoning amendment for the Mulrooney quarry. So that's definitely acknowledged, and we have had discussions with the city staff. And that transition between the two zoning bylaws is going to be considered through the amendment process that is currently underway. Mulrooney will also require zoning permission for the pre-existing uses to continue. And that is actually an express requirement of both Mulrooney and Morgan's as landowners. And that is necessary for the pre-existing uses, which constitute their current and future business activities to continue and to be allowed. The quarry use will only consume a limited amount of the site at any one time. And there is essentially no separation required between the quarry and the pre-existing uses. Therefore, both the quarry use and the pre-existing uses can peacefully coexist. And that's why we're looking for those pre-existing uses to be also permitted through the special extractive zoning bylaw that's being requested. As we know, obviously, a critical and statutory aspect of the Planning Act process is the public meeting that we're having here tonight. And in that process, the agency and public review comment period is still ongoing. However, under the Aggregate Resources Act, which is the third, or I guess second set of applications that's being made, that process is a bit more advanced than the Planning Act process. So the ARA process was initiated on February the 2nd. That application is for a Class A quarry license. It's a Class A because the amount of tonnage being produced annually is more than 20,000 tons. And the approval authority for that license application is the Minister of Natural Resources and Forestry. Now, the ARA comment period has, the ARA public and agency comment period has ended. And in that process, no comments were received from members of the public. Comments were received from the province through the Ministry of Natural Resources and Forestry and through the Ministry and from the Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks. Also from the Conservation Authority, which is, of course, in this case, is Cataraqui Region, and from Hydro One. Those comments are currently being reviewed and addressed by Mulrooney's consultants, involving some additional technical work and obviously responses to the questions that are being raised. That is a process that may reach resolution within the 2-year period, by which Mulrooney must report back to the Ministry of Natural Resources and Forestry on the status of the application. That's a 2-year period from February 2nd of this year. Or it can continue beyond that time period, right up to the time of a decision on the licensing, which is either made by the ministry or the Ontario Land Tribunal, if the ARA application is referred by the Ministry of Natural Resources and Forestry to the OLT. Slide 7. Thank you. The studies that were submitted in respect of not only the ARA application, but also the Planning Act applications are listed here. So I mentioned the second item there, the site plan. So some of the graphics that we've seen are taken from the site plan. The site plan basically describes existing conditions, how the site would be operated, and how the site would be progressively and finally rehabilitated. And of course, there are technical reports that were submitted as well. So they include an Aggregate Resources Act and Planning Act planning report, a level 1 and level 2 hydrogeological assessment, a natural environment technical report, again, completed to the level 1 and level 2 standards. Archaeological assessments were completed. They were completed only to the stage 1 level, except for a very small area of 120 square meters, which was subject to a stage 2 report only because that was an area of the site that looked like it had been undisturbed for a number of years. There was also environmental noise and blast impact assessment reports completed, a traffic assessment report, and a built heritage resources and cultural heritage landscape checklist was submitted. And as I mentioned before, although there are 2 sets of applications here ongoing, Planning Act and Aggregate Resources Act, we have used the same technical documentation for each, so that the review agencies are looking at the same documents, whether they are looking at it under the Planning Act or the Aggregate Resources Act. Slide 8. Slide 8 is thank you and questions. So Dan and I would be pleased to take any questions that committee or staff or members of the public may have. We will certainly try to answer them now as best we can. If there's anything we cannot answer, then we would be pleased to get those questions in writing and respond.
Thank you very much. We have altered slightly, I believe, under, and the clerk can correct me if I'm wrong, but we now go to the public right after this, and then committee is given an opportunity for follow-up questions afterwards. Are there members of the public that are waving at us?
Mr. Chair, thank you. And through you, we do have 2 members of the public with us at this time. So I'll just give them an opportunity, if there's anyone who wishes to speak to the current application, to please raise your hand in Zoom so that we may call on you. That's located in the center of the screen when you move your mouse over the Zoom window. Again, if there's anyone who wishes to speak to the current application, please raise your hand in Zoom so that we may call on you. There are no hands currently, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. I will now turn to the committee. Any members of the committee wish to speak to this? And if Councillor Chappell could turn on his camera, I'll be able to see if you raise your hand. Thank you. I appreciate it. Yes, Councillor Chappell.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. My question relates to the neighboring properties. I was wondering if the applicant had reached out to the Kingston area, Kingston Rifle Pistol Club, and discussed any potential impacts this quarry would have on their ability to function. And if so, what was the dialogue? I am somewhat concerned. I do know that they have a well on their property, and I would like to know if there would be any impact to their water source if the quarry was to go ahead.
Thank you. And if the proponent or their agent could speak to those 2 questions.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. To my knowledge, there has not been any discussion between Mulrooney and the rifle organization. There has been discussion with some of the more closer landowners, the ones who are bordering on the property. The hydrogeological report that was done did not identify any potential for loss of water at the location of the rifle club. So I would say that there should not be any concerns around that. But certainly if Councillor Chappell is aware of concerns that they might have, then they are more than welcome to bring them to our attention.
Thank you, Mr. Sandhu. If you could approach them before the comprehensive report comes back to us, that would be much appreciated.
Yes, Mr. Chair, we will endeavor to do that.
Thank you. Any other members of the committee with questions? Yes, Councillor Hutchison.
Just one. Talking about the backfilling of excess soil and that being part of the rehabilitation of the property in due course. Where is the source of the excess soil?
Thank you, Councillor Hutchison. Through you, Mr. Chair, to the councillor. The excess soil would be from construction projects that are ongoing in the area. Obviously, Dan Mulrooney's company, Mulrooney Trucking, is also in the construction business. He's mentioned the projects that are ongoing right now and would continue. So as construction activities occur, mostly through site preparation, excess soil is generated. And that would be the source of the soil. Now that process has recently gone through a significant amount of change in a fairly short amount of time over the last couple of years. The Ministry of the Environment, Conservation and Parks has released new excess soil rules and guidelines. And attendant with that, the Ministry of Natural Resources and Forestry has recently, even maybe just a couple of months ago, aligned and revised their rules about importation of excess soil to pits and quarries. They've aligned their rules to match MECP's rules. So now, hopefully in theory, we have a consistent and a cohesive framework that deals with these things. And it certainly raises the possibility where there's a construction activity going on. It needs crushed stone aggregates. The stone is delivered by the truck from the quarry. And at that same construction site, you have excess soil. And when the truck goes back to the quarry for the next load, it's not going empty. It's actually carrying excess soil from the construction project that now can serve a beneficial reuse at the quarry location. So in that respect, it can be quite a closed loop and a very efficient system and process.
Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. Did you have any questions, Councillor Sanik? No? Then I'm going to deputize you if I can. If you can be the vice chair, I just have one quick question. Thank you very much. I'm curious, and this may be a question for Mr. Mulrooney. We often have aggregate quarry proposals coming from much farther away. And it's always a concern in the having to drive heavy loads for great distances. Do you anticipate that this very large quarry project, you'll be dispensing of the aggregate within the majority within the greater Kingston area, or much of it in the greater Kingston area?
Yeah, 75% would be in the greater Kingston area. We work between Trenton and Brockville right now, but most of our work is right in the city.
Okay, I appreciate that.
Mhm.
Any further questions? If not, I will declare this public meeting over and we'll move on to, I can find it here, our planning committee meeting with a couple of proposals before us. Thank you very much, gentlemen.
Thank you,
So-
Mr. Chair. Thank you, committee.
Thank you.
The planning committee meeting number 16-2022. I'll call the meeting to order. We need a mover and a seconder for the approval of the agenda. Councillor Chappell, Councillor Osanik. All those in favor? Carried. Confirmation of minutes from our July 7th short meeting last week. Is there a mover and a seconder for the minutes? Councillor Osanik, Councillor Chappell. All those in favor? Carried. Any disclosure of pecuniary interest? Seeing none. Delegations, we have none. Briefings, we have none. Our first business item is a supplemental report regarding 1200 Princess Street, and that's the Providence Village proposal. Hello, Ms. Grant. The floor is yours.
Thank you, and through you, Chair, can everybody hear me okay? Okay, great. So I don't have a presentation today just because of the scope of the report, but I will just provide a little bit of an update. So the committee will remember, and just as a refresher for any members of the public listening in, at the committee's May 5th meeting, staff had presented a recommendation for approval of a zoning bylaw amendment to rezone the property at 1200 Princess Street to a site-specific zone that would permit a 6-story and 320-bed long-term care home. A number of residents of Fairview Road attended that meeting and submitted correspondence as well, mostly raising concerns regarding the traffic impact study associated with the proposal. And in response to those comments, Planning Committee passed a motion to defer the application to allow planning and transportation staff enough time to consider some alternative access options and to report back to the committee. That motion directed staff to report back by the end of July, and that timeline was put in place in order to meet the timelines that are required by the committee's procedural bylaws. So as an update since that May 5th meeting, planning and transportation staff have been working with the applicant team to review alternative transportation solutions to support the long-term care home. Staff have quite a robust internal reporting system in place. And unfortunately, given those timelines for our internal reports, we weren't able to establish all of the details of an alternate option prior to when the report was required to be submitted for this meeting tonight. So we're continuing to work collaboratively with the applicant team to come to a solution on this. And we anticipate having a supportable alternative within the next week or so. As such, we're at this time recommending a further deferral of the application to September 2022 to allow us sufficient time to establish all the details of that option to the satisfaction of our transportation staff and to allow us the time to prepare the report for committee. We understand that there is likely some curiosity tonight about what the committee will see in September, but we're at a stage right now where the formal submission has not been completely reviewed and approved by our transportation staff. So we're not in a position to comment on that final approach tonight, but that alternative option will be presented in September. The updated traffic impact study will also be made available to the public on Dash ahead of that meeting. So they are welcome to review that once it is made available. And just in terms of notice, I wanted to provide some information for the committee. So notice of the deferral recommendation being put forward tonight was provided by email to all those who submitted correspondence, as well as our standard mail outs within 120 meters, as well as updated signage on the property. And we will be providing notice in the same way for the September meeting with a summary of that alternative option that will be presented at that time. So that is it for me tonight as a summary, and happy to answer any questions if needed.
Thank you very much. Yeah, are there questions from the committee? I just have one very quick technical question for the clerk, if I can. We don't typically have, and this isn't a criticism, but we don't typically have our own planning staff recommending to us a deferral. If Mr. Park can give us an idea, or Mr. Barr, how long a deferral is required, because deferrals should speak to time and place. Mr. Barr.
Hi, everyone, and through you, acting vice chair or chair this evening. As Ms. Grant has pointed out, we are nearing the end of this review, so we're only requesting that the deferral to allow staff sufficient time to finalize the review of alternative options take us to September of this year, so September 2022. There are 2 planning committee meetings in September on the 1st, and I don't want to get the second day wrong, so I believe it's the 1st and the 15th that month. So it will be coming to one of those 2 meetings, and we would provide sufficient notice in accordance with the Planning Act for whichever date it lands on.
Great, I appreciate that. Before I ask for a mover and a seconder so that we can defer it, again, a question for our clerk. This typically, if we move and second it and then defer it, we aren't giving short shrift to members of the public who may wish to speak to us. Is that accurate? Because there isn't an actual proposal on the table.
So, Mr. Chair, there is a supplemental report that was brought forward with the recommendation that is effectively going to defer this matter, but it does need to go up to council for approval for that deferral to return back to the committee, as we are beyond the 90 days that the committee would be able to do that themselves. So as this is an official business item, there are the 2 members of the public, if they wish to speak to it at this time based on the new information coming forward, now would be a great time to do that.
Fair enough. So if there are no members of the committee that wish to speak to this at this time, we'll go to the public. And if you can identify any hands up.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And through you, I'll just remind members of the public if they wish to speak at this time, they will need to raise their hand in Zoom so that we may identify them and assist with unmuting. So if you could please raise your hand if you wish to speak. I'll just do a final call if there's anyone who wishes to speak to the application on the floor at this time. And there are no hands, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. So I'm just reading quickly again, the section B. So we can move and second to put it on the floor, and then we'll go to the recommendation on section B. Yes, Councillor Osanic, question or moving? Moving?
Moving.
Thank you. Seconder. Thank you, Councillor Hutchison. Any further questions? Okay, we now have it on the floor. Yes, Elizabeth.
Mr. Chair, if I just might provide clarification, we are on business item A. So
Okay.
just so that we're all speaking about the correct recommendation on that.
Okay. I apologize. Okay, so, and the recommendation there is that staff be directed to provide a supplementary report at a September 2022 Planning Committee meeting, providing details or other access options for the property. So is that what Councillor Osanic moved and Councillor Hutchison seconded? Yes, good. It's now on the floor. All those in favor? And that carries unanimously, which takes us to the comprehensive report, section B. And the recommendation.
Mr. Chair, if I may just quickly interrupt, as we have voted on the supplemental report, item B has now been overcome by the result of the supplemental.
I'm
we
so
do
glad you're here tonight, because my head is still in St. John's, I think. Thank you very much. So that will come back to us. And if there's seeing no other member of council with their hands up, we will go on to motions, and we have none. Notices of motion, seeing none. Other business, seeing none. Date of our next meeting is Thursday, August 4th at 6 p.m. So, thank you very much. Motion to adjourn. Councillor Chappelle and Councillor Hutchison. All those in favor? Wave with me. Adjourn. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for stepping in.
Yes.